Lily Thompson clutched the keys to her new apartment, the cool metal biting into her palm. Apartment 313. She didn't believe in superstition until now. Still, with the rent as low as it was, she ignored the number's eerie implications. The old building seemed warm enough, its worn-out hallways filled with character, and she spent the afternoon arranging her furniture, putting away dishes, and marveling at the vintage charm of her new space. As dusk fell, shadows stretched long and sinister across the walls. A strange, musty odor wafted from the bathroom, and the creaking of the floorboards felt oddly deliberate, as if someone were stepping just out of sight. Telling herself it was her imagination, she flicked off the light and climbed into bed, determined to rest after her long move. Just as she was drifting off, she heard it, the unmistakable sound of running water. Groggy, she sat up, eyes adjusting to the darkness, and saw the soft, flickering glow from the bathroom. Her stomach dropped. She forced herself out of bed and tiptoed toward the half-open bathroom door. Maybe it was a leaky faucet, she thought, though her heart hammered with doubt. She reached out a trembling hand, inching the door open when, bang! The mirror rattled violently, and a dark figure lunged toward her from the other side of the glass, only to vanish in an instant. She gasped, stumbling backward, her own pale reflection now staring back at her in the stillness. Her heart pounded as she realized she'd just gotten her first taste of what lay hidden in apartment 313. The whispers started as soft murmurs, barely audible like wind threading through a crack in the window. Lily brushed it off, but each night they grew louder. It wasn't just random sounds, it was distinct, as if someone were standing just behind her bathroom door, deep in conversation. One night, the whispers escalated, accompanied by the sound of creaking floorboards. Her bedroom door, left ajar, shifted ever so slightly, groaning on its hinges. She held her breath, listening, but the voices fell silent, leaving only the oppressive quiet. She lay still, blankets pulled tight, her heart thundering. The next day, desperate for answers, she approached Mrs. Baker, the elderly woman in the apartment across the hall. "Is there a history with 313?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Mrs. Baker's face paled. She glanced down the hall, her eyes darting nervously, then leaned in close. "A young woman used to live there, back in the 80s. Poor thing, they say she disappeared." She paused, casting another wary glance over her shoulder. "Some say her spirit's trapped in the walls. Don't let it know you're afraid, dear." As Lily turned to leave, she heard a low creak from behind her, a sound that seemed to come from inside her own apartment, even though she knew no one was there. A chill slithered down her spine as the door to 313 slowly clicked shut, echoing through the empty hall. Lily began avoiding her own bathroom. Something about the mirror unnerved her, as though it held secrets just waiting to break free. But she couldn't avoid it forever. One morning, her reflection caught her off guard, seeming to linger just a fraction too long, like a shadow refusing to retreat. She felt an uneasy pull, like she was staring at a stranger in her own skin. That night, she forced herself to look closer. Standing inches from the glass, she held her gaze, determined to prove her paranoia wrong. Seconds passed, and just when she was about to turn away, her reflection blinked, but she hadn't. She jumped back, heart pounding, staring in horror at her own face in the mirror, which was now perfectly still. "I imagined it," she whispered, trying to calm herself. In that tense silence, a voice from the mirror seemed to murmur back, "No, you didn't." Frozen, she felt the blood drain from her face as the whisper echoed, chillingly clear. She stumbled backward, bumping into the bathroom door. Her breath came in gasps, but when she looked back, the mirror only showed her own pale, terrified reflection, unblinking. The apartment was silent once again, yet the unsettling sensation remained, like something was lurking, just beneath the surface, watching her through her own eyes. The days started blending into one another. Exhausted and unnerved, Lily found herself lying awake at night, her heart pounding with an intensity she couldn't ignore. She'd wake up in a cold sweat, certain she'd heard someone whispering her name. Every time she turned the lights on, though, the room was empty. But the whispers never left. They seemed to cling to the walls, threading through the silence like an unbreakable web. It wasn't just her mind playing tricks on her, she was sure of it. Her belongings started vanishing one by one. First her favorite mug, then her toothbrush, and even a pair of shoes. One evening, after frantically searching, she found her keys lying in the middle of her bedroom floor, although she was certain she'd left them in her bag. Her pulse raced as she reached down to pick them up. Just as her fingers touched the cool metal, she heard a faint but unmistakable whisper, "Stay with us." She stumbled back, her heart pounding, her breath shallow and fast. Her gaze darted around the empty room. "I'm not alone," she realized. One stormy night, as lightning flashed outside her window, the whispers rose to a fever pitch. They circled her like taunting voices, their disembodied laughter mingling with the thunder. Lily's heart pounded painfully in her chest as the shadows in her apartment seemed to deepen, almost pulsing in sync with her racing heartbeat. Desperation gripped her. She packed a small bag, hands trembling, ready to flee. But when she reached the front door, she found it wouldn't budge. Her keys were missing again. She tried calling the landlord, only to be met with static on the line. Her eyes darted toward the bathroom, and her breath hitched as the door creaked open on its own. She could see her reflection standing there, unmoving, with a wide, twisted smile. Panicking, she stumbled back, and the whispers surged louder, echoing, "You'll never leave." She braced herself against the wall, breaths coming in ragged gasps, then fled to the bedroom, heart pounding as the sinister laughter faded into silence. Dawn seeped through the curtains, casting a dim gray light across her apartment, but the feeling of dread clung to her, suffocating and relentless. Driven by a strange compulsion, Lily found herself drawn to the bathroom mirror one last time. The floor felt ice-cold underfoot, and the air was thick, almost electric, as though something waited within the glass. She stood inches away, trembling as she faced her own reflection. Her reflection's eyes seemed darker, hollow, and glinting with an emotion she didn't recognize. Summoning all her courage, she whispered, "What do you want?" The reflection's lips curled into a smirk, its voice a chilling echo of her own, "To take your place." In a flash of rage and terror, she seized a porcelain soap dish and hurled it at the mirror. The glass shattered, shards scattering across the floor. The whispering abruptly ceased, and the air around her felt lighter, almost free. Gasping, Lily staggered back, the apartment finally silent. She had broken whatever force had bound her, and with it, the haunting grip of apartment 313. Chapter 7. The Aftermath. Lily never returned to the apartment. She found a new place across town and swore off looking into mirrors for a while. Her hands still shook when she thought about the smirk on her own face, if it had ever been her face at all. Later, she heard from a friend that apartment 313 had a new tenant. The friend swore she'd seen a woman's face in the window, smiling as if she'd been expecting her. Chapter 8. The Return. Lily thought she had escaped the horrors of apartment 313. Weeks had passed since she'd shattered the mirror, moved across town, and tried to reclaim a sense of normalcy. But the nights hadn't been entirely peaceful. Sleep came in fragments, haunted by fragmented whispers, and her dreams often led her back to that bathroom, to her own twisted reflection grinning back at her. One evening, she noticed a strange item in her new apartment's bathroom, a small, cracked shard of mirror lying in the sink. Her stomach churned. She could have sworn it was a piece from the mirror she'd shattered in 313, but how could it have followed her? As she lifted the shard, a faint voice echoed from it, an unsettling, familiar whisper. Her own voice rasped from the shard, almost playful. "Miss me?" In the glass's dim reflection, she saw her own face, smiling, only this time her eyes were pitch black. Late October 2024, in the heart of social media frenzy, a challenge began sweeping across YouTube, spending a night in a house known for its mysterious paranormal history. Inspired by viral ghost hunting videos, thrill seekers flooded the platform with experiences in eerie, abandoned places. The house at the center of it all was nicknamed the Room That Listens, after several chilling claims that the walls would echo your words back at you, months or even years later. But there was more to it. The room didn't just listen, it watched. This viral trend reached Eric, a small-time vlogger. His paranormal content had always been on the fringes of the genre, and he saw this as his ticket to YouTube fame. Others had braved haunted houses and captured shadowy figures in 8K resolution, but Eric knew he had to outdo them. He had to go live, uncensored, alone. The house stood at the edge of a forgotten town, shrouded in fog and whispers of ancient horrors. It had been abandoned for decades, yet no one dared tear it down. People said that the last man who lived there, Leonard Mason, could hear voices. His family thought he was insane until they started hearing the voices too, sometimes their own, calling out from impossible distances. In a fit of madness, Leonard disappeared, but the legend of his house never did. Eric arrived just after sunset, filming his entrance for his live stream. Thousands of viewers tuned in, eager to see if he would catch something paranormal. He cracked a few jokes, masking his nerves as he ventured deeper into the house. "All right, guys, we're going straight to the infamous listening room," Eric said, his voice echoing in the empty halls. "If this place lives up to its name, maybe it'll listen to me." The room in question was small and unremarkable, except for the heavy wooden door that creaked ominously when Eric pushed it open. The walls were cracked, peeling, but oddly enough, the center of the room was spotless. No dust, no cobwebs, like someone had been keeping it clean. The air was thick, heavy, as if the room was waiting. Eric set up his equipment, reading aloud the requests from his chat. "Say your name. Ask if anyone is there. Tell the house to listen." He rolled his eyes, but did it anyway. "My name is Eric, and I'm here to talk. Can you hear me?" For a moment, nothing happened. The chat buzzed with disappointment, but then the temperature plummeted. Eric shivered, his breath visible in the cold air. He grinned nervously at the camera. "Okay, that's weird. Pretty sure I didn't bring a portable freezer." He continued speaking, each word more deliberate than the last, but then something strange began happening with the stream. Viewers started posting frantic comments. "Check the audio, the echo is wrong, it's saying something else." Eric paused and replayed the stream on his phone. He couldn't believe it. His voice had been distorted in the echo. Instead of repeating his words, it responded. Where he had said, "My name is Eric," the echo replied, "I know who you are." His blood ran cold. He stood frozen, staring at the camera, unsure of what to do. The room's atmosphere grew denser, as if it was pressing down on him. The chat exploded in panic. "Get out! Leave now!" But Eric, desperate for viral success, kept filming. "Okay, that's creepy," he muttered, walking toward the door. But when he reached for the handle, it wouldn't budge. Panic set in. He turned back to the camera, hoping his followers would see the fear creeping across his face. He tugged harder. Still nothing. The door, which had opened easily moments before, was now immovable, as if it was never meant to let him leave. Eric's phone buzzed violently in his pocket. He glanced at the screen and saw dozens of texts from friends and family, but something was wrong. The texts were in his voice, like audio clips sent over the air, and yet he had never recorded them. His mother's voice echoed in his head, but when he played the audio, it was Eric's voice saying the words, "Come home, now, please." Heart racing, Eric bolted back to the camera. But it wasn't broadcasting anymore. The feed had cut, and instead of seeing the dark room through his lens, the display showed him. The camera was playing back the footage from a minute ago, but something was horribly wrong. The Eric on screen wasn't moving. He wasn't looking at the door or the camera, he was staring directly at himself. Eric stumbled backward. His reflection, or was it, in the camera turned its head ever so slightly, lips twisting into a slow, deliberate smile. He had never smiled like that. His hands, shaking, reached for the camera again, but just before he grabbed it, the lights flickered and the room plunged into darkness. A voice, not his, whispered from the walls, "I told you, I know who you are." Eric screamed, fumbling for his flashlight. When it flickered back on, the room was empty. His camera was gone. The equipment, gone. His live stream disappeared from the internet as if it had never happened. There was no trace of his video on his channel, no proof he had ever been inside the house, but his phone kept buzzing. More messages, all in his voice, sent to his family, his friends, his followers. "Don't come here. Don't look for me. I'm gone." When the search for Eric began the next morning, police found the house abandoned, just like always. No equipment, no sign of Eric. Only one strange detail stood out. On the walls of the listening room, scratched into the old plaster, were the words, "I am listening." And now, weeks later, Eric's face appears in the background of new viral videos. Shadows flicker across screens, moments so brief they can only be seen when played in slow motion. Every once in a while, his distorted voice whispers from the background of other YouTubers' clips, telling viewers what not to do. Don't let it listen. But no one listens.